fun fact, my name is George because of this church, actually, interestingly enough.
As you should.
So I was born on October 24th, 1994, and that was like, I was born at like 1 a.m., and that was like a Sunday morning, and that was the first liturgy that was prayed here. So my dad decided to name me George after St. George Astoria. But my real name is Mina George, and that's a more complicated story, because my mom really liked Mina because of Abuna Hanna in Queens, told her to name him Mina. Like, he told her to name me Mina. Then my dad was like, well, the first liturgy prayed in St. George Astoria was today, so like maybe we should put George in too. So they just named me Mina George, so fun fact. That comes, yeah, hence my nickname Mun Mun, which is also more confusing. So you could just call me whatever you want. That's usually what I tell people when they're like, what do I call you? And I'm like, I honestly, I don't know. Whatever you want to call me. So yes, my name is George. I'm very happy to be here. And so Maria Muniz actually asked me to speak about something related to like fear. And like, one of the first things I thought of was The Office, because I love The Office. And I thought of Michael Scott, like when he was asked, like, would I rather be feared or loved? Like, easy both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. And like, you know, it's like Michael Scott, he's kind of an idiot, like, haha, it's so funny. But like, the more you think about it, the more it's actually like somewhat of a profound statement, right? So like, yeah, like most of his statements, they come off really like silly and stupid and like, haha, like he's just a clown and like that's why he's funny. But like, I think the beauty of the show is that there's like a lot of like hidden gems and like hidden wisdom in it, and I think this is one of them. So I think like, just to like state it up front, I think a lot of people, when we talk about like the fear of God, have sort of like the wrong approach and like the wrong mindset when we're talking about fear of God and like what fear of God is. And I think it really boils down to like really just this quote, right? Like, I think like when we approach God and when we think about like our relationship with God, like we love him so much that it's fearful. It's not like necessarily fear as we think of it. So I thought a good way to start is to set up like our working definitions. That way like we're all on the same page, like what is fear and like what causes fear. So like, what do you guys think? Like, I want to hear from you. Like, what is fear to you? I have my assumptions and my definitions, but I want to hear from you so we're all on the same page. And I think for the live stream, you'll need the mic, right? Or just scream it. Right, like consequences. That's an aspect of fear. Sure. Anything else? Yeah. Your eyes said it. I agree. I think that was one of my definitions. I think it is a feeling too. Does anyone have anything else to offer? So what I thought, it's so like the textbook definition, right? It's like a vital response to something either physical or emotional, and it usually involves like harm. And like from like a psychological standpoint, it has like 3 components to it: like the intensity of the fear, the timing of the fear, and then like how you cope with the fear, like how you're gonna deal with it. And then usually like fear is caused by something, right? Like there's either like a trigger, and that's like, you know, like the threat of a harm, whether it's like real or imagined. Like I'm scared, like I really want to go skydiving, but my fear in skydiving is like, what if the parachute doesn't open and I splatter? Like that's a fear. Like I fear the harm of what can go wrong. And then something else that causes fear is anxiety. Like that can like overpower somebody. And then there are also like phobias, right? Like my sister actually has a phobia of cotton balls, which is the strangest thing ever. Like, and it's not like it's like it grosses her out or something, but like she's just terrified, like scared of like ripping cotton. I can't wrap my head around it because it's a fear. It's like her fear, and it's not my fear, so I don't really understand it, but it terrifies her. I don't know why. I don't think it like pertains to anything, like there's no physical or emotional harm, But that's why it's a phobia, right? It's like it's a fear that is somewhat, like, for lack of a better word, irrational. But it's still a fear. So why do we fear people? Like, going back to like the Michael Scott quote. Like, why would we fear someone we love? Like, why would we fear a person? Aside from if they're going to harm you, that's a different story. Because you could lose them. I think that's good. But would that? I guess, yeah, that's a good one.
Or they do something, not like physically, but they do something that hurts you. Like they did something that you're like, okay, so disappointed. You have a different perspective of them.
So you have a different perspective of them.
Yeah, like if they did something that like changes your point of view, like if you love someone and they did something so shocking, you're disappointed, like you're changing your perspective.
Oh, I see. So like if you love them so much,
yeah,
and they do something that alters like that image of them.
So like for example,
Okay.
let's say they rob a bank, like
I see. That's a good one. Okay.
what? What?
Like you,
What they're capable of.
you're afraid. Yeah, I guess you're afraid of like what they're capable of, what they could do.
Yeah.
Why else would we fear
That's
people?
Why, hey, trust no one, guys.
Trust no one.
Exactly.
Why else would we fear people? Nardine, you look like you're gonna. Oh, they have power over you. That's a good one. I think it's a really good one. Yeah. Usually, someone is like in a position above you to do something that could hinder you, like a boss, right? Nardine, you look like you were gonna say something. I don't know if you were. We fear people because they might hurt us. I think that's very valid. Anything else? I don't have like my own answers. That's an open-ended question.
I have a fear of like when people reach a certain point, like we never knew what they were capable of. Like if you're holding so much anger and they just like yell at you, I have a fear of that.
So like, sort of like, I guess like fear of like a disappointment or like a negative reaction towards somebody.
I mean, I want somebody to yell at me, but what? Because no, like if they yell at me, like, they will see a different side of me.
All right.
They will fear you.
Yeah, maybe they'll fear you. So, would you ever like fear someone out of like someone that like didn't do you any harm or like wouldn't do you any harm?
Yes.
Why?
There's no guarantee they wouldn't. Yeah.
Well,
Trust no one.
Okay.
well, maybe it's like your parents, like your parents are not going to harm you, but
There's no guarantee of that.
no, they can't. No, they won't harm you. You're not scared of them ever because you know, like, yeah, your dad maybe can punish you, but it's never going to be to the level of like destroying you.
I mean,
You know?
I got the belt a few times, so
Same here, but like it's not to the extent that like.
Dad, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but no, I get what Joe is saying though. I think like sometimes, maybe not our parents, but we can like fear somebody out of respect. So like I had a professor in college that I was more so, I guess, intimidated by, because he was very well known and he was like a very prominent person, and like even that didn't necessarily intimidate me. Like yeah, it was like scary, like oh my god, this guy's like been like he's like in the news and stuff. But then like just the way he carried himself and the way like his demeanor and like how he like talked and like how smart he was and like how much like he knew about like the world, like that scared me. I was like, whoa. Like, what if I am not good enough for him? Like, what if I say something and he's like, wow, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard? Like, I think like that was like, it wasn't like I was like, and like I wasn't scared that he was gonna say that out loud, obviously, but that was like my fear in like approaching him, because like I wanted to like have like my best foot forward. I wanted to like make the best impression, like because he was so prominent, because he was like so smart, and because he was so grand. I think that's another like aspect of fear. So like I guess that leads into my next question. What is like the fear of God? Like how are we working with, what is like our working definition of that?
Oh, you want us to answer?
No, I want you to just think about it and not answer. No, yeah, I actually want an answer. I want an answer. Sorry, that was sarcasm, to be clear.
Pretty good at sensing that. I know, I'm all about sarcasm. Anyway. Anybody else?
So what you're saying, like to boil it down to like one sentence, right? It's like what you're saying is like the fear of God is more so like it's not because of the consequences. You're scared of the consequences. You're scared of like disappointing him in like a more loving way, right? Okay. Does anyone have any other like definitions? There are like, you know, what I didn't really like have like write down a definition, but I had like examples of when we use like the fear of God, right? So like Proverbs, like the book of Proverbs is like it's like a book of wisdom.
He keeps on saying that.
And like the
fear
whole
of God is the beginning
yeah,
of wisdom.
the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is knowledge. Like in liturgy, every liturgy that we have, worship God in fear and trembling, or like, you know, stand up in the fear of God and listen to the Holy Gospel. So like, does anyone, like based off of that, like does anyone have like a definition besides what Marmar said, which I think was a very good definition? I think it was a great definition personally. But if anyone has anything else to offer, let's hear it. Okay, so my next question is, if we're working off of that definition, right? We don't want to disappoint God. We aren't scared of the consequences. So but why do we need to? Why do we need to fear him? Like, why do we not want to disappoint him? It's a hard question.
I mean, for me personally, I fear him because he literally died for me on the cross for my sins. And I'm sinning and I'm doing all of this and you did so much for me and I don't deserve it. So I fear like you shouldn't be in that position. Like he's basically my father and you died and you love me so much and I'm not worth all that love and I'm not worth all that comfort and sacrifice that you gave for me. So I fear that I don't deserve that. So I love basically.
Out of love, right?
Okay, guys. Okay, I don't see anyone else talking.
So you fear him out of love. I agree with that.
You love us
Not shed you. Sorry, you loved. What? Sorry, who spoke before that? Nerdy, what'd you say?
I was just adding on to what you said. He loved us first. So we love him.
Right. He loved us first, so we love him. What else? What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say like maybe to start have a relationship with God, you must like fear him. Because like if you like don't have a relationship with somebody else, just because he like died, I don't know anything about God, but I know that he can punish us. So at first like I'll fear him,
Mm-hmm.
and then I guess I'll learn more about God.
Sorry, what'd you say?
To start, you must fear.
Okay, so like to start a relationship with God, you should fear him because
Like, you
of
don't
the
know anything else.
consequences. You don't really know anything else, but he can punish you.
So like some people might something might happen inside of them and then they just all of a sudden no one love God. I don't know. But me personally that was
Okay. Were you gonna say something, Laura?
I just said I feel like it's very counterintuitive.
Why is it counterintuitive?
I don't know.
I-
It feels counterintuitive to say like
Which part?
fearing someone and knowing that they can punish me leads me to love. That statement feels very counterintuitive.
Fearing someone, because they know that you can punish you,
Yeah.
leads you to love is counterintuitive. I agree with that actually. I think I'm with you in that it's counterintuitive, and like I don't think that's how we should approach it actually. I'm trying to remember if I had it. Yeah. Okay. Because I think that actually what you just said leads me to like my next point, because I think like a lot of us think, and like me included, a lot of us think that like we have to fear God because he can punish us, and because like if we don't, we're gonna go to hell. But like I think we should take a step back actually and look at like, you know, like why were we created to worship God, and like why were we created in the first place, right? So like why did God create the world? which is a very, very tough question. There's not really a right answer, like what we were talking about like before the meeting.
I'm looking for the answer.
If there were a right answer, I think, if there were a right answer, like there realistically would be one religion in the world. But so Saint Basil offers his views on why God created the world. He wrote about creation a lot. So Saint Basil's view on creation and why God created the universe in general starts with love, right? So we're working on the assumption that, like, you know, God is the creator and God is the creator of the universe, and that God is a perfect being, right? So God wanted to share in that, like, in the perfection, in his perfection, right? So he created the angels. But the angels, they have their roles. They have their own role. The angels are not the image of God. He created something that was an image of him, that in God's nature, this being exists, and that being is man. So that being was Adam and Eve. And then he created the universe. Why did he create the universe then? If he were to create us out of love and out of wanting to share in that perfection and sharing in the glory that is God, why would he then create the universe? For us to rule over. If we're created like God, we're not gods. We are not divine. Like, we're not divine in the sense of, you know, like, we're not rulers over the world. Like, we can't, like, we're still limited by our human nature, which I think, like, there's an explanation for that too. But if we are like God, then I think it's logical to say that God created the universe and God created the world for us to have dominion over, which is exactly what happened in creation. And that's what St. Basil offers. But then, so why would, like, God is all-knowing and God is perfect, right? So then God must have known that we're going to be sinners, right? Why would he then create us? I mean, he willed for the world, and he willed for man.
Oh, this is so much pressure.
Why, like...
Okay, well, no one else is answering.
So he created us to like participate in his creation.
Right, he created us to partake with him. And that's like, that concept is called like deification, or like theosis, right? To partake in the nature of God, and not become God. That's like a very, very slippery slope, but to be like God, to partake in a union with God. But, like, isn't it unfair if, like, he knows that we're going to be sinners?
No, if it was our decision.
It was our decision. I agree with that. But why was it our decision?
Because he can't like create us as robots. Like, if you actually love somebody, you wouldn't force them to love you back. Like, he gave us the decision to love them back.
I agree. And I think that, like, I think it's very difficult to say, like, I think it's unfair to say that, like, God should not have created, like, humanity if he knew that we were going to be sinners. Because he did create us in his nature. He gave us the ability to be perfect. Like Adam was born sinless. Eve was born sinless. And, like, when they were created, when the world was created, there was no death. That wasn't a thing. We say it in liturgy, like, every time, like, death which entered into the world through the envy of the devil. So, like, we know it came later. We know death was not a part of the creation. So I think a lot of us, like, we have a definition of, like, punishment, right? So, like, punishment is, like, usually something like, it's like physical or emotional, and it's like, you know, like, you did X, so you deserve Y because you suck. Like, this is something, like, as a direct result of your action, like, I'm going to, like, chastise you and I'm going to be harsh towards you, and, like, it's usually associated with, like, you know, like, anger or, like, disappointment or something. But and we usually, like, translate that definition to apply to like God in punishment and in sin. But like what is sin if you like think about it? No. I don't think it's anything that upsets God. I think sin does upset God, yes. But I don't think that's what sin is. I don't think that's the definition of sin. It's simply just a separation from God, right? I also don't think it upsets God either.
That was sin.
Yeah.
I think it's a separation.
I think the separation from him upsets him. And that's the distinction that you have to make. Like, see, like, by saying, like, sin upsets God, like, we're applying our view of punishment to God. But that's not how we're supposed to approach God, right? Because, like, when God created humanity, and when God decided to create the universe, like, what was his plan? When God created humanity, what was his plan for us? Like, in creating us? Like, why? To enjoy the creation. And to enjoy what? Paradise. And to enjoy, like, him, right? So, like, by that logic, does God want every single person he created to go to heaven? Like, would that be part of his plan? Yeah, right? So, he acknowledges that he created us with the ability to think, so that, like, we could freely love him. So it could be like a true love. And he allowed punishment so that, like, it's not because we did something wrong, not because we upsetted God or we disappointed God with sin, but simply, like, if sin is like an absence from God, then he introduces punishment for our own good. And that usually is like, it's two things, right? It leads us to repentance, or like it puts an end to the evil that is associated with the sin. And that's even including death, right? So a lot of the church fathers, they write about death not like, oh, it's part of God's plan. It's not. Death was never a part of God's, like, plan for salvation, actually, because and we know that because he created the world without death. Death entered into the world later. But death is actually, like, sort of sometimes used as a tool for God, because since we were corrupted in nature, and since we do, like, partake in sin, and since we do separate ourselves from God, death is an opportunity. Simply put, I think St. Gregory and St. Basil both said this, that death is simply just an opportunity for us to stop sinning. Like, it wasn't necessarily like a punishment, like, oh, because you did this, you're going to die. It's just like, I'm trying to help you. Like, I want you to partake in, like, the perfection that I created you in originally. So I'm going to introduce death into the world to get you out of that misery.
But death was a punishment.
How is death a punishment?
Because in the beginning,
But
when they ate
sorry, go
from
ahead.
the apple,
Mhm.
they ate from the apple from the tree of life, and so that's when death entered. And I do think that it's a good idea that death is put into place so we can not sin, but at the same time, it is a punishment because there's people, right?
Did God send those people to hell?
We chose to sin. That's why.
Sorry, before you speak, Laura, go ahead. Okay. Well, I want to hear what you have to say first.
Well, we chose to sin, so we chose them. So
Right.
Adam and Eve chose, so it's passed down to us. So I think we're the ones responsible for all of that.
Yes and no. So what you first said was correct, in that we do choose sin, and it's not necessarily that we choose death. Death is just is a part of the world now to put an end to a sinful life, right? That is like a natural reaction that God had introduced into the world for our sakes. Because if we were to live eternally like he had intended for Adam and Eve, but our nature had then become corrupted, we would just continuously live a life in sin. Even if, like, it's like a cycle, right? Like, you repent and you, like, work on something. Like, that doesn't make you perfect, right? Like, you can strive towards perfection, you can keep working towards it, but you're never, like, going to reach perfection. And then similarly, like hell, there are a lot of different views on hell, so I don't really want to get into it. But hell, like what we do know is that like God doesn't like his plan for every single person is like, I want you to go to heaven. Like I want you to be on the path to salvation because that's how I created humanity. But then once Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of like good and evil, like evil entered into the world, evil entered into like our mindsets. So then now we have a choice, right? And that even explains like, you know, like when people are like, why do bad things happen to good people? Because other people have a choice to do bad things. And that has its consequences. So like, God isn't saying like, because you did this, you're going to hell. It's more so, I want you all to go to heaven. But I want that choice, I want that to come from you. I want that to be your choice. I don't want to force you into heaven. Like, I don't want to force you into paradise with me. But you have that choice. Like, you can make that choice yourself. I'm going to leave that up to you because you are like me. I created you in my image, so you now have like the choice. Like you have free reign over this universe that I created for you. Does that make sense? What was your question now?
So, I know we have like free will per se, and like we have like a choice, but given that like we have the knowledge of, oh, if I don't make the right choice, I'm gonna be separated from God or go to hell, doesn't that act as kind of like a coercive force into kind of pushing us towards the right choice? And if so, does that maybe have like actual freedom? Like, do you have actual freedom if you have a coercive force pushing you somewhere?
That's a good question. And I think that question floats around a lot, like the whole like, do we actually have free will if the choice is heaven or hell, right? Like obviously it's like it's, if you think about it, it's a no-brainer, right? Like why would you want to spend like eternity in hell versus eternity in heaven? But I think
Well, I think personally, what I'm asking is, do you have a choice if there's a coercive force acting on your decision?
but so
But I want to, first I want to address, because I think there is like a premise, or like I guess there's like a presumption in the question. Because you said that if I sin, then I am being separated from God. But the reality is that we are already separated from God by virtue of the sin that entered into the world. So it's a matter of, am I choosing to remain separated from God, or am I choosing to, like, I guess, like, walk across that bridge that He has built for us?
But my question still applies
so okay,
either way.
I get your question in that like, so you're saying it's coercive because God created us, right? And like we're here on this earth whether we like it or not. And now the choice is like partake in Him and go to heaven or go to hell. And that's like sort of coercive. That's what you're saying, right? So I think that if you look at like, okay, if you want to go down like your route, right? Then God created, when God created Adam and Eve, right? How did He create them? Perfect, right? So what was the issue with them being perfect and being in the Garden of Eden and being in paradise? No, not that. Like I'm saying, like this is specifically like for Laura, like. But why is that a problem?
And you were clean at that time.
But like,
There was nothing.
no. But I'm not. I don't think they were influenced. What's your name? I'm sorry, Shedi.
Yeah, so I was saying that I think God just has, like, He gave you the first push, and He's letting you to take, like, see which side you want to go to.
But if you know at the end that you're going to go to hell if you take one route, do you really have a choice?
But you're not taking one route though.
Which route you want to go to.
It doesn't matter if it's two routes, you're still making a choice.
And you don't want to go to hell. Isn't that coercive?
There's two paths, the left and right.
I don't
Well, All right,
Wait, I think
Laura.
George understands your
I have a
question.
question. Yeah, I do. I understand your question. I have a question for you. So like, Adam and Eve, they're created in their perfection, right? They're sinless. There is no death. They can live forever, and they're in the Garden of Eden. Why is that a problem for you? Like, what's the issue with it?
That's not a problem for me.
So what's the issue?
The problem is now, after they sinned, like the choice that we face now. That's the
But-
issue.
But so you said two interesting things. You said two interesting things. You said, no, this is good. You said,
I don't think they understand her question.
so her question is like, okay, Adam and Eve were created in perfection, right? We established that. They're created sinless. And then all of a sudden they eat from this tree, sin enters into the world, death enters into the world, and now they're no longer immortal, but they're mortal. And now everybody after Adam and Eve has the ability to sin. They don't inherit Adam and Eve's original sin. That's not what we believe, but we believe that like we all have the proclivity, we have the inclination to sin. So like we're born with the ability to sin, and we're going to sin because our nature, like the two things that happened when Adam and Eve fell, it's like our relationship with God, which was a perfect relationship, needed reconciliation, and that's why Christ was incarnate, and that's why he died on the cross. But secondly, the image of God in us is distorted. So then the question becomes, like for Laura, is if the image of God is distorted and like we are inherently sinners, which now we are, then like do we really have a choice if our only options are heaven or hell? And like obviously hell is a terrible option. Like do we really have a choice in obeying God, in following God? And it's a good question. And you know, a lot of people it's a good question, and a lot of people ask it. But
I'm asking if there's a choice with a coercive element. Is it really a choice?
She thinks it makes more sense to choose heaven, to go to heaven.
like she's saying there's a force, there's like an inherent force sort of like pushing you towards the right path, because realistically that like it's a no-brainer, right? For
Yeah, but I think the fact that we can sit and say, this choice, like this route, looks like the good one, but I'm still going in this direction. It's not, because I think we need like kind of how we started with like a definition of
Right.
fear. I think we do need a definition of coercion and a coercive force.
Yeah,
Because if you recognize that one, like that, it's almost like something that we're putting on ourselves, that I'm recognizing this is the better route, so I am going to do what it takes to get there. That's not a coercion per se. Like that's not like the definition of
But isn't
coercion.
the possibility of going to hell inherently
so why does someone
go there?
why does someone go to hell though?
They're separated from God.
Because they're what?
Separated from God.
They're separated from God, right?
But they also like gave up.
I feel like
I don't think that necessarily they gave
well,
up.
not necessarily, but okay,
per
but
se.
what I'm trying to say is when it's, if you're saying, Laura's saying, okay, it makes more sense to just be like the right brainer to go to heaven than to hell. But in my point of view, I think, like we're talking about fear. For me, it's fear. I have a fear that being God's plan is hard. It's really hard. Nothing is easy with God's plan. Like with Abraham, he put him through a test to put his son and give up his son. So we are put through a test that is fearful. We go through so much in our life, carrying our cross. So I think at one point when we're going through our difficulties, we fear that and we just don't want to continue.
But doesn't the fear of giving up and going to
No,
hell
but
push
if
you
you're
more?
Well-
if you're in that point of view, you're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I give up. That's what I'm trying to say.
So
People are not in their right head. Okay, I know.
all right. Let's circle back for a second. Okay.
Now I'm bored.
Because
Did I confuse you?
No, I like your insight. I like your insight.
Like I'm saying, I know it makes more sense to go to heaven and to have that mindset to go. But when you're in the mindset of going through everything and carrying your cross, okay, I can't do this anymore. I give up.
wait, hold on. Okay, so that's good and right and like sure, but I think now we're trekking into something called like Pascal's wager, right? Which is like That the Pascal's wager, meaning like I'm going to believe in God because I'm scared of the other alternative. But that's not how God created us, right? So again, going back to why, that's why I started with the creation, because going back to why God created us without sin. He created us without the struggle, and Adam and Eve fell, and then sin and the struggle and all of that entered into the world. But still, God had a plan. Like he was like, okay, like even though you guys have the free will to choose that, I'm giving you the opportunity, I'm giving you the choice, I'm giving you the freedom to go back to that sinless nature, to go back to paradise. You can go back into the garden. You can go back in and enjoy perfection with me without sin. So it's not necessarily like, if you don't listen to me, you're going to go to hell. It's like, you have dominion over this world, and you have the opportunity to go back to paradise. Let's say like, I'm in this world over here, right? Paradise is over there. Like, I have the opportunity to go back over there. But what if I start walking down this aisle, and then I decide to like walk through this bench right here, and there's a rope here. So I trip and I fall, and I get injured, like along the way. Then, like, does that mean I'm never gonna make it to that spot over there? It might take me longer. There might be some help along the way. Someone like Veronica could come pick me up. Maybe not, because she's not a science person. She's not going to be much help. She's probably going to be like, I'm going to sue you for following in my church. But like we still have that conscious choice to get back to perfection. But if we don't choose that perfection, then we're stuck in like outside of perfection, right? What's the issue?
If you know that you can get, okay, let's say you want to go over there, and you know you can go this way, you can go around, you can go multiple different ways, but you know if you go through here, you're going to trip and fall.
And a lot of people make that choice.
Wait, let her finish.
But when you factor in the choices, doesn't that push you towards that way? If you know you're going to trip and fall here.
But this wasn't even supposed to be an option in the
But-
first place.
Yes, right.
But it is an option.
It is okay, but
It wasn't even supposed to be there.
okay. All right. Better. Okay. Well, how about this? Does anyone have a pen and paper? Does anyone have a piece of paper? What?
It's being fun.
No, I can. It's not that important. It's not that important. It's not. Shady. It's fine. Okay. Let's say you're right. Why is that an option? Okay, you're right. Maybe that's a bad example. Let's say I want to go from here to there. And, I'm going to map out the steps that I'm going to take. Because like I have the freedom, like I'm going to say, like let's say I'm going to take 15 steps there and I'm going to get there. And that's like my choice. But let's say, I'm going to pick on Veronica again. Veronica's choice, because she wants to like screw with me or bully me or whatever she wants to do, her choice is like, I'm going to take 10 steps this way and trip him and then kick him while he's down. Like why is that my fault? But like I'm still hindered though. I'm still in this arena working towards it. But Veronica tripped me. It is an obstacle. So why is that different than me going this way and tripping on something that was there? But what if I what if I was like, I think I'm a pretty athletic guy, I can make that jump. And I try to jump over it like
Does anyone think they're going to avoid hell?
Yes, you could.
some people don't care. And that's the issue. But like they have that choice.
Here's the thing. I think we're a little bit like,
So-
what's paradise really, and what's like,
Well,
what's
okay.
paradise?
Laura, for people who do care, right? Let's talk about the people that do care. I'm not talking about like, we're gonna exclude anyone who's like a non-believer, right? Like we are working on the assumption that like, we believe in God and God exists, God created the universe. That's what we're working with. So for the people that do care, right? They're still trying. Even if I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna take this way because like I'm cool and I'm gonna jump over and like I think I can do that, but I'm gonna trip and fall. Like, is that the end all be all? Like, does that mean like I'm never gonna make it over there? Like, why? Like, can't I get rerouted? Like, can't someone come along the way and be like, hey, maybe stop trying to be a show off and just go down this aisle, go down the free aisle, don't trip. And then I'm gonna be like, I could be like, okay, you're right. Let me go down this free aisle, make it over there. Or I can be like, why am I gonna listen to you? Because like, you know, I made it over just barely, but I made it over. I can make it over that one too. I still have that choice. But I'm still working towards getting over there. It's just, am I going to like, do I really want to make it there? And that's like if I really wanted to make it there, and like I didn't want to make an excuse for myself, I would maybe be smarter about it. But it's up to me. Do I want to make it there? I have that choice. Like, no one is going to like push me or throw me there, and no one is going to like pull me back.
But I think sometimes the fear of going to hell can push people who like are like lukewarm in their
I
faith
agree with
into
you.
the right direction, and I think that's inherently coercive.
I don't think it's coercive. I think the fear for the people that you're talking about, people that are like, you know, I fear going to hell, and you know that's me sometimes. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to hell, so maybe I should go to church. Maybe I should wake up early and go to church. And like the whole point of this is like, that's not how we are supposed to fear God. Like that is it's not coercive because we're just coercing ourselves. Like that's not how God intended it to be. God intended us, again, to be sinless and to be like, to partake in his union. So for me to say, oh, it's either hell or heaven, I'm putting that pressure on myself when it's just a matter of like, I'm going to work towards that goal. I'm going to work towards getting back on that track to paradise. And I'm going to do everything in my power. But I know that God is perfect because that's how he created me to be. And I know that I'm not perfect. So I know that I fall short. And I don't fear God's punishment. Like, I know that God has the ability to punish, but not in the sense that we think about punishment. I don't fear God's punishment. What's up? Oh. I don't fear God's punishment in the sense that, he's going to send me to hell. It's just that I don't want to live in this imperfect nature that I'm already in. So I want to strive to be better. I want to strive to perfection. And that's how we're supposed to approach the fear of God, because we love him. And because he loves us.
Also, I think it's like, and I just as my own refresher, because I was like, do we know what the definition of coercion is? It's the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. And I think, Well, here's the thing, because that, if I view, God is not standing there saying act in this way or else I am sending you to hell. That is the threat, right? But when we talk about the practice of persuading someone by threatening them, it's not open this door or open this door. My route to heaven or hell is my entire life. And it is not, God is not standing at every stage of my life saying if you do that thing, by the way, that door is open and you're going in there. If you do that other thing, that door, it's too late. That door is way open. There's no way going back. That is what coercion, a life of coercion would look like. But that's not what or if we impose that on ourselves, that's not what God has intended for us. I'm not sure if that is making any sense.
I think that makes
You can add it to it.
So I have a question.
Yes.
If you have two doors in front of you and you have to walk through one of them, and one of them you know for a fact if you go in your whole body's going to be set on fire, and the other door
But what? Time out. Because I think we need to pause. Because this analogy of opening a door, just because you think you could go into either of those doors does not make it true. You are not, you don't actually have the ability to open that door to hell and go in. You don't actually have the ability to
but
open
isn't that free will?
No.
Well,
But it's not a one-time decision of your life. It's
you make steps
if I want
towards
to go
it.
to Stanford, just because I said I have to, Stanford is the best college. I don't know.
But if I said like Stanford is the best college, so like obviously I'm not trying to go to this other college. Like I'm going. That's it. I'm in. And like I walk into Stanford and I'm like I'm here. Like that's not. It's not exactly this. Like I think the parallel is a broken.
Yeah,
like,
it's an
not exactly.
oversimplification, but at the end of the day, you're going to
But-
one place.
But how? How do you know?
I think so. What I'm saying is like the oversimplification
What
makes
you're
it.
saying is God is basically just holding a paper and a pen, and as you're sitting, he's like, okay, yes, you did this. Wait, you didn't pray again in the morning. He's not doing it. He's not every action that you're doing. Yes, it's leading. It takes some steps to lead there. But I also think that we have the wrong definition with like paradise and hell. I think it's more about God and His presence more than the fire. Like,
Right. So what is hell actually?
Like,
Like what are you defining as hell? Pain? Why? It says who?
No, not pain. Not necessarily.
Says who?
It is, girl, it is, it's physical, emotional pain.
so what's causing that pain?
No. What? Who said hell? Like why is hell pain?
What?
Why is hell pain? Like what is your where is your definition coming from?
From the Bible.
Yeah.
Where?
It says
It's
very
Find me a reference that says hell is actual fire.
I got you.
No, I'm not saying that it's actual fire, but I'm saying it is like emotional pain. Like
'Cause-
you said.
It's saying it's pain because you're not with God.
Yes.
No.
It's
So
it's pain.
hell is actually a very very hard concept to wrap our heads around because who's seen hell?
What happened?
Who has seen hell?
I actually
The church fathers actually like they differ on what actual hell is. There is one universally accepted definition for the Orthodox Church of hell,
isn't it like a lonely place?
What's the
and it is what Joe said. Hell is just the absence of God. That's all we know. We don't know if it's actual burning. You don't know if like some church fathers they think hell is like brimstone and fire and like you're just gonna burn for all eternity. In where?
You're thinking of no, Nardine. I think because I think I heard you say the first part of it of that there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yeah.
That is talking about the end of the world. Like that is talking about the end of time.
okay, then never mind.
But that's not right. That's not.
So
talking
Revelation, the book of Revelation, is a very, 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 very misunderstood book. So the book of Revelation, I'm gonna take like 30 seconds to explain Revelation because it's severely misunderstood. Does anyone know why Revelation was written? Nah, not at all. So it was a prophecy, and it did prophesy about the end times. But John, you guys know that John, the disciple, wrote it, John the Beloved, like the author of the Gospel of John, right? So he wrote it at a time, well, he was isolated, one, but two, he was writing it as like, all of those like New Testament books, including the Gospels, realistically, were sort of like letters, right? They're written to an audience. So like, for example, Mark wrote his Gospel to the Greeks. And that's why like you don't really see references to like the Old Testament, because the Old Testament was for the Jews. Like the Greeks didn't really understand the Old Testament. So like the Gospel of Mark emphasizes miracles and like storytelling, versus Matthew who wrote to the Jews, so there's a lot of like, there's always an audience. So who is John's audience for the Revelation?
The future generations.
Nope. Well, yes, because it's clearly in the Bible, and like obviously it's meant to be read by everybody. But like when John was writing it, he wasn't writing it like, oh, this is going to be published in like a Bible one day. Like he was writing it like to a specific audience. Well, he was writing it to the Christians, like the people that followed God. It was Jews and Gentiles. But he was also writing it at a time where like persecution against Christians was so heavy by the Roman Empire that like it was to the point where like there was like so much martyrdom and like people were like dying for their faith that like Christians like were sort of like losing hope, and they were like, oh, like the world, like this is so bad that like the world is like gonna end or something. So John was like writing like a message, sort of like a prophecy of like deliverance for them, like to like, give them hope. Like even when there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, there's paradise. Like he never intended it to be a formula for the end of the world. That's my point. So the book of Revelation is a severely, severely misunderstood book because it references the end times and it prophesies about what the end times may look like, but you can apply it to every single generation in history. including right now. That's why, like, you know, like when the pandemic happened last March, like everyone was like, oh my God, like what chapter in Revelations are we in? Yeah, I'm sure people said that in World War II. I'm sure people said that in World War I. I'm sure people said that in the bubonic plague. Like it happens in it's applicable to every generation because it's a prophecy to deliver people that were going through a period of tribulation as a group. In that case, it was the early church. They were being persecuted against so heavily that they thought the world was going to end. Like 666, if you look at it, is actually like a codified like abbreviation sort of Nero Caesar, because they thought Nero Caesar was the Antichrist because he was so evil, because he persecuted Christians. So that brings me back to my original point to Marmar, when she said that, I didn't forget, don't worry. I go on tangents, but I don't forget. When she said that, oh, like hell, like hell is a burning place. It's not, like we don't, maybe it is, maybe it's not. But what we do know is that hell is the absence of God. So going back to your definition, Laura, of like coercion. Sure, it's coercive in the sense of like, we have a choice, right? Like, do we want to go back to our sinless nature, or do we want to stay sinful? And sin, as we acknowledged, as we defined before, sin is the absence of God. So do we want to stay in that sinful nature, or do we want to strive towards the sinless nature? And to me, that's not coercion. To me, that is, like, we were created in perfection, and like that's great. Like there's no need to like be coerced into anything because there was no evil. Like it was just good. So it's either like I want to go back to like being good, or I want to not be good. So like I don't think it's fair to say like, oh, we're only coerced into like going to heaven because like we don't want to burn in hell. We don't know if we're gonna burn in hell. What if like I think it's fair to say, and like this is my own personal opinion, like this is not the opinion of the church, but like what if hell is just this for the rest of your life? For the rest of, like, taking out time. What if hell is this? I don't know if, maybe it is. Or maybe we will burn. I don't know. But like, let's say what if, what if hell is this? And like, it just, like, do you really, like, for me, what's up?
Have you watched The Good Place?
Yes. Like The Good Place.
Well, no, don't kill it.
Oh, I love The Good Place.
It's
Oh my God, I love that.
The Good Place is not a theologically accurate show. So, for church purposes, I do not recommend the show, but it is a funny show if you take religion out of it.
Yeah. They were misplaced, thinking they were in heaven.
It's like the premise of the show is that this woman dies and she ends up in the good place, but she wasn't supposed to be in the good place.
She was supposed to be in the bad
She was
place.
supposed to be in the bad place. Huh? Well, I mean, yeah, it is very funny, but it's not.
It is funny, but like actually, so yeah, I don't like.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
but
wanna-
basically, like my point is like we're like
No spoilers.
we don't know what hell is, right? Like hell could be this, and to me this sucks. like sure, like there are good parts of like, you know, like being actually. let me just stop talking. I don't, like, does that answer? Does that like help clarify it though? Why not?
If you know it sucks, don't you not want to go there? So aren't you pushed towards the other option?
Or
how
if you-
is that? How is that?
But like, why is that
correct or
coercion though?
worse? Yeah, I think that's.
But like you have that conscious decision. Maybe I'm like, you know what? I enjoy this. Like
I
why?
enjoy this.
Maybe like I could be like, you know, like why do I want to be perfect?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really want to be.
I think, okay. So, I talked to this person.
Wait, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You can't have two conversations.
Being with God is that you can be with Him at each of those steps, and it's not like an end goal. Like
As opposed to you get to.
yeah, like Marcus is giving a parallel. Like he said, same with if you want to be a doctor, so you go to college and you go to med school, and then residency, and you're a doctor, and you're achieving.
Right.
And I was saying like it is similar, but the better part of being with God is that we're not like waiting.
But you know it's gonna be sweet at the end.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that you don't actually have to wait to be with God until like if we have the two parallel tracks, being like the end goal being a doctor and the other one being with God,
So what's heaven?
What's up?
We established what hell is. What's heaven?
So,
With God.
Presence of God.
so
You
all
said
I know,
absence of God,
so all I
presence
know
of
that
God.
is gonna happen, he said that you're just gonna praise God, like you're gonna only be looking at God.
We don't know what it is. It says in the Bible we don't know what it is.
Yes, but pretty much, that's like,
It's so good you can't like.
But you know it's good.
Why is it good?
But you just know it's good.
Why is it
Because you're
good?
with God. You're in the presence of God.
So what?
So what?
Why is that a good thing? I need a tangible reason. Why is that?
Okay, but I have.
I don't know, because people
I
tell you.
don't
Okay, but
I don't know.
I have a question. Do we, like, going on Laura, do you want to, like, go to heaven because you don't want to go to hell, or do you want to
That's
go
what
to
I'm
heaven?
saying.
Wait, or do you want to go to heaven because you want to be with God? Like, there's a difference.
Yes, that is exactly the point. There is like two.
No.
Wait, guys.
Like, I'm saying.
I think-
I'm saying like her point. Like she's saying, oh, it makes sense. Like,
Guys, listen to what Marmar's saying because this is a good point.
Miriam's actually right.
Like, do you want to go to heaven because you want to be with God and you want to strive to be with God, or do you want to go to heaven because you don't want to go to hell?
Meant to be striving to be with God.
I know people that are
Guys,
that and like that.
I know, I get that. I get what you're trying to
But
say.
I know some people that actually
Okay,
wanna
but
be
it
with
all depends. It all depends on your life and how you're going through it. Like, it just depends, dude. You can't just make a decision. Oh, I'm going to heaven.
One sec.
Oh, I'm going to heaven, or I'm going to hell.
I want
It
everyone to
depends
hear
on
it.
how your perspective on life and how you're gonna like. We don't know what God has in for us. We don't know what He has in store for us. Or
You
His
don't know
plan
what's
for us.
gonna be good.
Exactly, but I'm saying, how are you gonna like, whatever.
So,
No,
Mark-
I feel
Mark-
like-
I feel like my question has taken up way too much.
No, this is good. This is perfect. Mark wants to say something.
I think what they're trying to say is that like the reason that you're getting closer to God is it because you fear hell? Is that like a good reason why you should get
That's a coercive reason right there.
So that is the wrong reason. That's the point of this.
like fearing hell? Is that a good reason to get closer to God?
No.
No.
I think it's a-
No.
I think that's a terrible reason, actually.
Yeah.
It's
And
also
I-
the sort of, it's also not sustainable.
It's
Like
not.
you can only like guys, life is long. I mean, God willing, you know, it's not for everybody. But like the idea of life being so long and saying like, you know, like that's not exactly the most sustainable way to live a life with God, because He said, "I came so that they may live life and that they may have it more abundantly." Right? That's the name of our college group is Abundant Life. And so if my rationale for living an abundant life is just trying to avoid that bad thing at the end, it's not really, how long is that really going to hold on? Like, how long do you actually, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of, like, a negative thing that, like, I don't know, trying not to fail out of school. I guess that doesn't work. Never mind, that works for some people.
That does work.
So like Veronica's right, Mark is right, Mariam's right. Like the whole point of of talking about the fear of God is not because we fear hell. That shouldn't be it. If that is your motivation of like wanting to go to heaven, one, it's a selfish reason. Two, I'm in no authority to say this, but I don't think you would make it. I don't think it's like Veronica said. I don't think it's a sustainable path.
Because I think God wants you to go to heaven because you love Him, not because you're scared. Or not 'cause
Well,
you're scared
yes,
of
God wants you to go to heaven because you love Him, but God also He wants everybody to go to heaven because that is what He created humanity for. He created humanity to be like we established in the beginning. He created humanity to be like a perfect being that was like Him, that had divine characteristics, and that's why we have something that is called theosis, like to be like of God, to be like God, or like deified, like in union with God.
And I know we talked before, like in one of our Zoom calls, about like maybe for some people that is the starting place. Like I don't want to discount that, because for some people, especially like depending on like the life that you lead, or you don't like your vision of the world is like simplified into, you know, there's good and there's bad, and then someone presents to you like, by the way, maybe you end up in hell, and that is your starting point to trying to understand God. If I had to place my bet on how that person actually remains in relationship with God, it's not going to be that starting point. So that's not to say that like it is like if someone started out that way, that is bad, throw it all out, because maybe they like my hope would be that they started to learn
I think,
Because I don't want to discount that
Yeah,
there are
I know,
people that
that's a good
start
point.
there,
Can I
and
actually
it's
add to that?
Yeah,
Remember
yeah.
that monk that I told you about?
Oh, no, yeah.
That Australian wine, I keep forgetting his name.
There's
I
another-
think you definitely know. He's from
There's
Australia in St. Anthony's Monastery in Egypt. He did a few documentaries on YouTube about him and his life and
Oh,
stuff
okay,
like that.
Is it Abuna Lazarus?
Yeah, I'm gonna lie.
Yeah.
His story, if you see how he got into the faith, it doesn't make it. He came through St. Mary. He had no idea about God. He stayed in this monastery because of St. Mary. And then God kept showing himself little by little to him in certain circumstances where he started getting to know God. And it all comes to the end of what you want to do. You know, again, you can start with fear, but as your relationship is building, as she
My
said,
hope is that you would realize that that's not really what he meant by fear, and that's not really what, like, you want
you
to
just
describe.
struggle to keep that relationship and you get to grow in it, and your perspective changes. It doesn't stick to you. You can't maintain fear.
What's up, man?
I was gonna say that like Pope Smuda wrote a book and he said that your relationship with God starts with fear, but as you like mature, you're gonna realize that you're actually gonna love God back, and you no longer need to like fear the consequences.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think like it's not necessarily the end of the world if you do fear hell, but that shouldn't be your motivating factor. Like you shouldn't approach the fear of God like with like the fear of hell. You should not conflate the two. So I guess to bring it all back and to like sort of like wrap it up, like what does the fear of God look like? Like what is it supposed to look like? If we don't want it to be coercive.
No fear.
So think about it. If you don't have fear,
We shouldn't be afraid. That is exactly right.
So no fear.
So why do then what is the fear of God that is constantly referenced in the Bible? It's constantly referenced in liturgy. Have you ever heard of the Book of Sirach?
Yeah.
The Book of Sirach is a sort of it's part of Scripture. It's a deuterocanonical book, meaning like it's in the Septuagint text. It's in like so the Old Testament or like the Bible as a whole was written in Greek, and then it was also written in something called like the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text came years later. So like the church and the Jews and everybody universally used the Septuagint text, like because the world was a Greek-speaking world. And the Septuagint had Sirach, and it had a few other books that are not in mainstream Bibles today. And like basically like, you know, long story short, after the Jews expelled the Christians and like sort of excommunicated them in the year like 86, they decided not to use like the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint text, and they decided to use like something called the Masoretic text, which didn't have a lot of books like Sirach. And part of the reason was like a political reason, because the Christians had gained so much traction at that point, so that they wanted to, one, separate themselves, and two, there were some like books and Bible stories that made like Jewish elders look bad, like this, for instance, the story of Susanna and Daniel. So they removed it from the Greek text when they published the Masoretic, which is a derivative of Hebrew. So then, fast forward to Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther also decided to adopt the Masoretic text, and that's why in like, you know, you open a paper Bible, you won't find the Book of Sirach. But the Book of Sirach is a book of wisdom. It's another book of wisdom like Proverbs, and it is like probably the most practical book in the Bible. Like it's like this whole thing is just straight up like just Bible verses, because I like usually like if I'm using like a Bible verse or something, I'll usually like throw in a Bible verse and like paraphrase it and like, you know, like elaborate on it, but like this like just did not need any, like I couldn't say it any plainer than like the Book of Sirach does. So it's like, you know, the fear of the Lord is glory, and it is honor, and it's rejoicing, and it's a crown of exaltation. So nowhere does it mention that it's, you know, it's like a fear of going to hell, or like it's a negative fear, or if like it's like a fear of like harm, right? The fear of the Lord will also like delight the heart. The fear of the Lord is supposed to be joyful. Like it's not I'm gonna like do good because I don't want to end up, you know, like not making it to heaven. And it will be well in the very end for him who fears the Lord on the day that he passes away. He will be blessed. The love of God is honorable wisdom. So like what does that mean? Sorry, you're raising your hand?
Yeah, doesn't that contradict with, because like I've heard like fear of God's wrath, like God's
what context?
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but I just remember like that phrase specifically, like God's wrath. I'm sure people have probably heard that too before.
No, I know it's in the Bible, but I'm asking in what context, because for us to really to like understand anything, like any concept or any verse or any phrase in the Bible, it's very, very important to understand one, context of it, and two, the purpose of it, right? So you can't look at the Bible as a, like a historical document, like sort of like a textbook, right? The Bible is a series of books composed by different authors, and each author was divinely inspired. It's not the exact word of God. It's not like God breathed the words into them and they wrote it down, but they had the divine inspiration to write down these words, but they were writing to a specific audience, and they were writing with a specific purpose. So they have that the author's freedom, and they still have like the creative expression to express it in a way that they want to. So when they're referencing like the wrath of God, right? Let's say a lot of it is in the Old Testament, right? Like you hear about like the wrath of God on these people, the wrath of God on like these people, and God ordered them to kill the Canaanites, right? It's not necessarily like God was angry and resentful of these people and wanted them to die, but it was rather that there were opportunities given to these people to partake in God. And they had a choice. They had the conscious choice. Like, am I going to target the Israelites, whom God was speaking to, or am I going to live with the Israelites whom God was speaking to, or am I going to target them and try to kill them? And that's when, quote, the wrath of God, or the vengeance of God kicks in. So it's not necessarily that they are murdered because they don't believe in God. It's that, one, Israelites are defending themselves, and two, it's actually, if you look at the context of it, a lot of it is God's mercy. Where, so I don't know if you were here in the beginning, we were talking about death. Death entered into the world for a reason. Death entered into the world after Adam and Eve fell because, simply put, it was a tool for God to get us to stop sinning. We're living a sinful life, and if we just keep on living forever, we're going to keep sinning. So God introduced death into the world, or death was introduced into the world as a result of our actions so that we could stop sinning. So in a lot of those cases, the wrath of God, in which people usually die from, it's actually giving them an opportunity to get out of the evil and corrupt nature that they're in. And that happened a lot with the Canaanites and the Amalekites and all of those ites and the Philistines and all of the angry people in the Old Testament. It wasn't necessarily because they were evil, they deserved to die. It was rather they were on a path that they would have never repented.
They were going to destroy the Israelites too.
And they were going to destroy God's people and going to destroy God's word. So it's better for them, it's better for their own sakes to be put out of that to be taken off that path and to die. And that's where the whole the wrath of God kicks in. So again, to close off, we see a few verses from Sirach. Literally, I could have copied the entire chapter, Sirach 1. It's all about the fear of God and just really practical tidbits like this, and talks about joy, and sort of repaints the picture of what the fear of God looks like. So for our own lives, what does that look like? Sorry, Laura, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask, since this isn't included, you mentioned that it wasn't included in the Bible basically after the translation.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way we can...
Oh yeah, so it's on Coptic Reader.
Oh really?
Yeah.
No, and it's on the app
The app that you sent me?
Oh, Katina? Yeah, it's on Katina too. I forgot.
They have all it's actually the Coptic Bible.
Right,
The
so
Coptic Bible contains
it's-
these books, just not the English one.
Yeah, so it's any book that came after, any biblical translation that came after the Protestant Reformation excluded it, and that just happened to be when the printing press was also invented and Bibles were distributed wildly. So that's why like most paper Bibles don't have them. But like if you get like the Orthodox Study Bible, like it has it in it. Or if you use what's it called, Bible Gateway, that website, if you go to like the Revised Catholic something, it has the word Catholic in it. That translation also you can find like the Book of Sirach and like all of the other deuterocanonical books, because the Catholic Church also uses them. But so I highly recommend reading Sirach 1 on your own. It's like maybe like 25, 30 verses, and it's really, really like practical. I love Sirach. It's a really, really good book. But so again, like just to like really close off, like what, like if we want to approach the fear of God without actual fear, what does that look like?
What was the question?
So if we don't want to like approach the fear of God in like a more like coercive, like I'm scared of punishment type of way, and we want to approach the fear of God correctly out of like love, what does that look like?
Maybe it's even when you do something wrong, you keep in mind that that when you're being trusting and hopeful always. Even when you do something right, even when you do something wrong, you always keep in mind that he'll be there to pick you up. Maybe.
Okay, I like it. Remaining hopeful, remaining steadfast. What else? So, I think there are like, I guess, a few things that you could like translate to. I'll just put them all there. So, I think like reminding ourselves of like, we want to go back to that sinless nature. We want to go back to paradise. We want to re-enter the Garden of Eden and go back to like experiencing that joy, that union with God. And like, not only because he created us, but like, because we want to like be one in his nature with him. And that's why the Eucharist exists. That's why communion exists. That's one of the tools. St. Athanasius writes about it. And like, that's why like we have that concept of like deification and like theosis, to partake in his nature. And to get away from that absence of God, from that the evil that enters into the world, because like obviously it does have negative effects on us. It does have negative consequences. And like Psalm 33, like it says it beautifully, like turn away from evil, do good, seek peace and pursue it. Like that's another way to approach the fear of God without, necessarily like, oh, I'm scared of hell, but rather like, peace is nice. I want peace. So like, how do I attain peace? Do good and pursue it. And then sort of like approaching God with the reverence that he is like a perfect being. And it's not because like, oh, he's perfect, so I'm scared of him, but it's like, wow, like he is a perfect being, and like I am in awe. Like I'm like when it's like when we say worship God in fear and trembling in liturgy, it's not like bow down, you peasants, and worship God because like you are unworthy of being in his presence. It's yes, we are unworthy of being in his presence because he's so like perfect, and like we are just small compared to him. But that doesn't mean that like God's gonna stomp on us. It's just rather like we're appreciating like how perfect he is, and like and we can do that by looking at like what we fall short in. Like we fall short in love, we fall short in patience and kindness and a lot of other things. So by looking at like this perfect being and like how much God loved us so much that he sent a part of him into the world to feel what we felt and to feel what we should have felt by being crucified, by being tortured, by enduring that pain for us. So that's like wow, like if I could like even like have like an ounce of that love towards somebody else, like that's pretty cool. But I don't know if I can. So that's why like we could like look at God in a sort of like awe and reverence instead of, oh wow, like if I do this I'm gonna be punished. And that's like the main point I wanted to get at. So I'm glad that Laura did ask that, because I think it brought up a lot of like interesting points, and I think it touched on a lot of like what we sort of like misconceive about how God views us and how God created us and like how God wants us to be. Like he doesn't want us to be a fearful people. He doesn't want us to be like so scared of going to hell that like we just are on the right track. He wants us to strive towards like our intended state, our intended like perfect nature. And in turn, like he does that by loving us, like no matter what. Like we can fall, we can stray away from the path of righteousness, we can stray away from the path towards salvation, and he's still not going to be like, no, I hate you, it's too late. Like there's always, no matter how far you fall, no matter how far away on the path you are, no matter how many times you trip on that rope, like I would have, if I jumped over it, like you could still get back up, you could still find your way back to the path. So it's not necessarily a sort of fearful nature or hateful nature. And that's what I wanted to get at. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks for letting me pick at your brain for like an hour.
I don't know if I answered anything usefully, but
I asked all the questions.
I don't know if I answered any questions, but I just ramble a lot. Does anyone else have anything else to add? Joe, Veronica, anyone else? All right.
Thank you, George.
Thank you,
And he did say later than he had intended, so thank
I
you,
did.
George.
It's all good. It's just it's too interesting to stop
Yeah.
it.
I did not
I like
warn you.
having these conversations. I like having these discussions.
Yeah, same.
So thank you, Laura.
And if you guys want, not that he's offered it, but I will give you his contact information if you want.
Yeah, you can text me like Veronica does, but usually I'm really bad at responding right away. But I will get back to you. I promise.
He does. And then
I
it's like,
have to think sometimes. I don't like speaking without thinking about it.
yeah. Yeah. So if you ever just need to ask a random theological question.
If I don't have the answers,
George so
I'll
gracefully accepts from me all the time.
There's also a lot I don't know, and I will gladly tell you what I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, George, so much for coming. We hope we didn't scare you away. We definitely want you to come back. So prepare your next topic. Oh yeah. Well, that's a can of worms. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions right now before we pray? Okay. And also we have donuts that we need to finish downstairs. It's done. Is there coffee done?
Yes.
The coffee's done too?
Everything.
Everything is done. Okay, I was gonna say let's finish that while we decide where we're gonna go eat. But it's just gonna be
And I
a
am
parking lot
running,
decision. So
And I am running.
after we pray. All right, let's get. We're praying, Joe. Someone wanna pray for us? George, you wanna pray for us, please? Yeah, I think he did just talk about someone save him. Shady, saw some movement. It does happen. All right, go ahead, Shady. You can keep it short. All right, Joe.
Thank you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Thank you, God, for all your blessings. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your life. Thank you for being with all of us, in all of our hearts and all of our minds. Please be with us, help us, guide us, teach us, and lead us, Lord. Don't leave us every day. Help us and forgive us our many sins. And be with everyone that wasn't here today, and with everyone here today. With the intercession of your Mother, St. Mary, and the intercessor of this church, St. George, listen to our prayers when we say thankfully.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And gracious are the Lord, and thine is the kingdom, and power, and glory. And those who came late, you missed out on where